Hi everyone, welcome to Probably Nothing. I was about to say it's so great to see you all, but I can't see anything other than myself. So it's so great to see me back on, I was going to say your screens, but my screen, because that's what I can see. This is now series 7 of Probably Nothing. I don't know how we've got here, but it's thanks to all of you watching and all of the lovely people that are my guests on the show. So we're in series 7 now, which is really exciting. So welcome if you're joining us live, welcome, come in. And if you're watching on catch up, because it will be available on all of our platforms after we finish recording, thanks so much for taking the time to catch up. Hello, it is lovely to be with you all. So Probably Nothing started 7 series ago. Very good at maths. And it started because I was running the Ask Eve information service that we have at the Eve Appeal, which is a free expert information service that people can call or email with any type of Guinea Cancer query. And we, myself and the wonderful nurses, help them as best we can. And it started because so many of the questions coming into Ask Eve would include the phrase, you know, something like, sorry to bother you, it's probably nothing but, and then they would go on to ask their gynae health concern. And most of the time, a gynae query or gynae problem will be probably nothing, i.e. not something serious or something to worry about. But for about 60 people every day in the UK, they are diagnosed with a gynae cancer. So sometimes for some people, that probably nothing is something. And we just wanted to, 7 series ago, which feels like a million years ago now, create this online space where I speak to an expert in whatever we're talking about, or somebody sharing their personal experience, and get information about whatever topic it is, whatever subject related to gynae cancer, out there in an informative and accessible and kind of easy to understand way, without people having to spend ages on Google kind of trying to get through medical jargon and things like that. So that's my nutshell. And I always say to Disruptive Media, the wonderful people that do all of this streaming and recording for free for us, and they don't pay me to give them a shout out either, but I always say to them at the beginning, you know, I'm not going to do that long an intro. I think my record was about 7 minutes once, so I'll stop that. But series 7, yes, it's going to be all about menopause. We have 4 episodes every Tuesday at 6 o'clock throughout October. This is episode 1, and as I said, we're focusing on menopause throughout the whole series, and today's topic is going to be gynae cancer symptoms for people who are postmenopausal. So this isn't about going through menopause because of a gynae cancer. That's going to be next week's subject and thing to delve into. This is all about if you're going through menopause or postmenopausal and you're concerned about your risk or symptoms of a gynecological cancer. So I'm going to now welcome in my expert guest for this week. I was about to say she's one of my favourites, but I say that quite often, so I don't think it seems very sincere, but she genuinely is. I love I know I just sound like I'm spouting rubbish, don't I? I'm like, it's my best friend Bella. And you're like, before you say that to the last person. This is Bella, everybody. Bella, Dr. Bella Smith. She is, I'll say Eve Appeal ambassador first, even though she's a GP, but I like to put our little bit at the beginning because I think it's more important because it's our Eve show. But obviously, the GP is her main role. So she's a GP, Eve Appeal ambassador, and co-founder of the Well HQ, which is a platform helping and encouraging and informing women on how to stay active and fit at every life stage. Hello, Bella.
Hey, how are you, darling?
Oh, you've got a leopard print star on your top.
Do you like it?
Look at that. Nice bit of boobs. It's getting dark outside. It's turned into a different show. Bella, thank you so much for being my lovely guest.
Great pleasure. Great pleasure.
Can you just do, even though I did my little spiel, can you just do a little intro to yourself and your interest in women and gynae health, if that's okay?
Yeah, of course. Do you know, it's lovely to see you, Karen. I could just sit and chat with you for hours.
Couldn't we?
So I'm Dr. Bella Smith. I'm a GP. So I'm based out in Suffolk, and everything in my surgery, I see everything, but I very much have an interest in women's health. So I do all the coils, the implants, the menopause care, the gynae stuff. How long have I been with Eve Appeal? I mean, we've been working together off and on for I
would say since like at least 2017, maybe.
Yeah, quite a long time. And love it because of all the, you know, the stuff that you do, talking about symptoms, raising awareness. It makes more women come to me and GPs like me, and we're informed with the, you know, concerns, and therefore more women get seen, more women get treated. And so it's,
and why are you why does kind of gynae health and women's health kind of interest you? Like, why is that your particular sort of interest?
I think I just find it very rewarding. I find I find it very easy to talk to other women, and B, I just find it very the subject matter, talking about menopause, is very rewarding, because there's so much that can be done, and often this is a really vulnerable time for women. And so therefore to be able to help them is actually really, really satisfying. And it's also an area that has been neglected, I think. I
was just about to say it's not been spoken or put in the spotlight as much as it should be, because everybody that has gynae anatomy will go through menopause in some capacity at some point.
It's a normal life stage.
Depending on what bits of organs you've got, what you've had wrong in your life, whatever, you know, it's going to happen, isn't it?
So exactly that. So I think that first of all, yes, exactly that. Menopause is a normal life stage for all women to go through. But secondly, women's health in general is still surrounded with shame and stigma and taboo and embarrassment. And so to be able to give people that warm, safe, trusting, supportive environment where they can share information and you can make such a big difference is incredible. And so, yeah, so two reasons, really. Love it. Yeah.
And I think this is interesting, isn't it? Because lots of, when kind of gynae health is spoken about, it's often kind of attached to obstetrics and pregnancy and kind of younger people and cervical screening and smear tests. But actually, so there are, if people are watching and don't know already, although I'm sure lots of you will, there are 5 gynae cancers, so in order of prevalence: womb, ovarian, cervical, vulval and vaginal. Vulva is on the outside, vagina is the canal connecting the vaginal opening to the cervix, vagina is on the inside, and my favourite phrase, you can remember it because it's got the word in it. No one's paid me any money for that and I feel really depressed about it. But isn't it true that, so apart from cervical, which is at its most common, whenever we say kind of most common and more common, we don't want people to panic and think, oh my God, I'm in that age bracket, I'm going to get this thing we're talking about. It's actually unlikely you will get one of these things we're talking about in the grand scheme of things, but we have to share the information because we're a Gynae Cancer charity. And when we say more common, we just mean that in their small bubbles of, you know, say compared to things like breast cancer, 9,000 for womb cancer diagnosis, it's more common to get a gynae cancer. We don't mean you're definitely going to, but apart from cervical, which is at its most common in people under 45, isn't it true that all the other 4, so womb, ovarian, vulva and vaginal, are significantly more common in people that are post-menopause? But
yes,
that's not
absolutely.
It's not spoken about with people that are gone through menopause and having a gynae cancer. I think the spotlight is a lot on younger people a lot of the time, isn't it?
And I think in general, cancers are more common as we get older anyway. But absolutely, gynae cancers. I mean, take vulval cancer, I think 80% are over the age of 60. So yes, absolutely, we need to be vigilant. We need to be aware, and women need to be kind of checking themselves. Even if you've gone through the menopause 10, 20, 30 years ago, keep checking, keep knowing what your normal is. And as you go through different life stages, you have to navigate the kind of the symptoms and how you feel and understand what your new normal is. So for example, if you've had, I always talk about a natural menopause, a medical menopause, or a surgical menopause. So that's obviously a natural one is when you go through it naturally and your ovaries gradually stop ovulating, and you have your perimenopause and it's very slow and undulating. And then you have a surgical menopause where your ovaries are removed, and then you have a medical menopause where you're given tablets to switch off your ovaries. And all of those can happen at different ages, but also can have a very different symptom profile. And once you've gone through that, you then need to understand, okay, what is my normal now? What is, you know, I'm not bleeding. Do I have certain bowel habit that's different? And understanding what your new normal is, so that then if something goes wrong, you can then notice the abnormal, and that's when you need to go and get help.
And before, because we're going to go into the different gynae cancers and their symptoms and the kind of risk and if the symptoms vary once post-menopause, but because we're starting off the series and it is all about menopause, can you, if someone's thinking, you just said perimenopause, what's that? You said about ovaries kind of stopping ovulating. Can you kind of just give us an overview and definition of what it means to kind of be going through or be postmenopausal or having gone through the menopause?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the menopause basically is when our fertile years come to an end and our periods stop. Menopause, that's what it means. And the perimenopause is the kind of the grey area. I call it the hormonal roller coaster that leads up to going through to the menopause. So if you imagine our menstrual cycle, we're having a regular cycle every 28-ish days, all the way through our fertile years. As we approach the menopause, we don't ovulate every month. So therefore, our cycle goes higgledy-piggledy, goes up and down, our hormones are imbalanced. And that is what the perimenopause is.
And what age can that sort of start? Because
I
heard it start at like late 30s.
Mid-40s most commonly. Yeah. But there's always a normal distribution. Do you know what I mean? There's always extremes. So
it doesn't mean there's something wrong if it's under 45. It's just that like mid-40s or does it mean something wrong?
It does. So under 40 is an early menopause. So it's primary ovarian insufficiency. So under 40 would be classed early. And that is very important to diagnose because these women do need hormone replacement therapy. It's a grey area between 40 and 45. But yes, it most commonly from around age 45, but it can be 55. Some women, and that's the other thing. I think something like 25% will have very mild symptoms, 50% of women will have moderate, and then you have 25% that have severe symptoms of the menopause. Some women, it's over like that, and they just stop the periods and it's done. Some women will suffer for a decade.
Met someone that just is like, fine, I'm done.
Yeah, sometimes, they just go, my period stopped, and that was it, you know. But that's why it's so important. If you think about us all as women, if you think about like puberty and you think about our menstrual cycle and our pregnancies and our going breastfeeding, etc., we are all so different in everything that we do. All our symptoms, the length of our cycle, how we ovulate, when we started, how we felt. Menopause is no different from that. It's just the other way around. It's like puberty in reverse is what it is. Yeah. And so we do think some girls at school started their periods and they were regular and they were inserting tampons when we were in like year 11.
I couldn't get a tampon in for years.
I know. I'm with you. I couldn't do it. Exactly. Yeah. So there you go. And so you get some women at the other end who literally switches off like that, and you get others it meanders and it can be hell. You know. So it's a really personal thing.
So if someone has stopped, so say someone is just having a period every month and then doesn't have their period, is that their definition through having gone through the menopause, when their periods completely stop?
Yes. So okay, peri is the roller coaster. Going through the menopause, if you're over 50 and haven't had a period for 1 year, then you are postmenopausal and should never bleed again. And if you're between 45 and 50 and haven't had a period for 2 years, then you are postmenopausal and should never bleed again.
That is, I didn't know it was a different kind of length. So 12 months or more if you've not had a bleed and you're over 50, but 45 to 50 you can't have bled for 2 years, and that's the definition of going through menopause. That's so why is that different?
Because you can the risk. So for me, it's the risk of postmenopausal bleeding, which is the indication of something wrong with your womb lining, which could potentially be something sinister like cancer, endometrial cancer or womb cancer. So, but you've got to remember that when you're still going through the menopause and the perimenopause, you can still bleed. And certainly if you're having, so the younger you are, the more likely that's just still what it is.
Yes, you know? I understand. It's more that it's just a transition rather than you've gone through and something.
And if you're on HRT, so if you are somebody who's perimenopausal and you haven't had a period and then you're given estrogen in the form of hormone replacement therapy, your risk of bleeding then goes up. So that's something slightly different, and you still need to talk to your doctor, but it's not quite so worrying because you've been given the estrogen.
And hormone replacement therapy, I'm sure lots of people watching will have heard of it before, but can you just quickly kind of explain briefly sort of what is HRT, and is it kind of common and normal and typical for someone to go on HRT? Because it's linked to when you go through the menopause, isn't it? You go on HRT because of that.
Yes. Okay, so HRT, hormone replacement therapy, is basically estrogen and progesterone and testosterone, which are 3 hormones. The estrogen is what you take to help with the symptoms right now. So when you go through the perimenopause, often you have symptoms like, very classically, things like hot flashes, night sweats, brain fog, problems sleeping, muscle aches. But then you can get other symptoms. So again, everyone's different. Some women get things like sore tongue, dry mouth, aching, itchy skin, you know, so it could be lots of different things. So the estrogen helps in the short term with the symptoms, but it also helps long term because it helps protect your bones and your heart and your skin and your mind and your bowels, etc. So that's the estrogen. If you don't have a womb, so if you've had a hysterectomy, you can have estrogen on its own, okay? But if you have a womb, then you have to have progesterone to protect your womb from the estrogen, because without the progesterone, the womb lining gets thicker and thicker and thicker, and then you could potentially develop womb cancer, which is what we don't want.
So if you don't have a womb, for whatever reason, because there are a million different reasons why someone has a hysterectomy, removal of the womb. If you don't have a womb and you're, so here's a question. Can you, so say I'm 35, I have my womb removed and nothing else, just my womb removed for whatever reason. Mm-hmm. Have I gone through the menopause then because my womb's removed, or are my ovaries, the fact that they're there, even though they're not pushing an egg into my womb, am I still ovulating? But I won't bleed, will I?
No, yeah, exactly that. You'll still ovulate, but you won't bleed. So
it's two factors, isn't there? It's the ovulation and the womb bleeding.
Yeah. So you haven't gone through the menopause. It's only if you have your ovaries removed, then that's a surgical menopause. But if you have your womb removed, then you won't bleed, but you'd still have a cycle, a menstrual cycle.
Yeah, you just wouldn't have anything to kind of show for it.
Yeah.
Fine. Yeah. So if you have no womb, but your ovaries, you haven't gone through menopause, and then when you start to go through the menopause, you can, if you've not got a womb, have just estrogen.
Correct.
But
some women do take a bit of progesterone because it can help them sleep, it can calm them, but that's something completely different. But yes, you can have estrogen on its own if you don't have a womb. If you have a womb, you must have progesterone in the form of a Mirena coil or a tablet or a vaginal pessary to protect your uterus from the estrogen.
Do you see, or have you seen in your experience, people that are, say, 55 and went on HRT when they were 50 and have got all their gynae anatomy still, but are kind of like, oh yeah, I've just been having estrogen for 5 years and no progesterone? Have you ever heard of people kind of being sort of put on the wrong path, or is
no? We're pretty good at and if anyone who's listening to this then please go and see your doctor, because that's wrong. So no, but remember that a lot of women have the coil put in, the Mirena coil, and that's sitting there quietly doing the job of the progesterone and will just be on estrogen.
So just because they're not taking a tablet that says, hello, I'm estrogen and progesterone, but they've got a coil, is kind of remember that you've got the coil doing the job.
Yeah.
Okay. And so let's talk about the 5 Guinea cancers. So we'll start with womb first, because it's probably the one that's specifically to the menopause phase the most relevant, I would say. So womb cancer, if people don't know, it's also known as uterine or endometrial cancer. It's the most common of the 5 Guinea cancers, so about 9,500 cases in the UK every year. It's one of the cancers that's more common in people that are post-menopause. And Bella, can you just talk a little bit about the symptoms of womb cancer, kind of in a nutshell, and then we'll go to the sort of menopausal angle of it.
Okay, so the most important one will be post-menopausal bleed. So if you've stopped your periods, you've been through the menopause and you're not on HRT, and then you suddenly bleed again or get a new period. The classic one was a lady that I saw in lockdown who said, life's pretty rubbish at the moment. I'm pretty lonely. And to make matters worse, my period started again, and she was in her 70s. You're like, oh, okay. That is a classic
really
kind of.
You do hear that happen.
Yeah. And it's not okay. And it's like, that would need urgent. So what we would do is a 2-week wait referral to a gynecologist, and they would need a camera into their womb to have a look to see and make sure that there isn't anything nasty causing the bleeding. So that's a most classic is a post-menopausal bleed.
If someone has post-menopausal bleeding, say they're 70, have a bleed, are you referring them on the 2-week wait because you're thinking, I think she's got womb cancer, or is it to kind of rule out womb cancer and it's not that likely, but it's more likely than if she was 35?
It's more likely than she's 35. It's literally need to exclude it before anything else.
Because
you know,
it's more likely to be at this point.
Yeah. And also the thing in medicine is you want to exclude the sinister things first, and then you can deal with the other issues. So if it's something else, great, but we should get her seen thoroughly and then revisit.
So kind of work backwards. Like, I've got postmenopausal bleeding. You start with the kind of serious side of things,
ruling out the worst first.
Okay. Yeah. And okay, so someone's got the postmenopausal bleeding. That's a key sign. But you know, you were saying she says, "Oh, I haven't had a period for a while, and it's now come back." But what if you're in the years like the perimenopausal years? This is probably a really annoying, picky question, but I just like, what if I haven't had a period for 11 months and then I get a bleed, and I'm like, oh my God, it's womb cancer, and then my doctor might say, no, because you're 49 and it's been 11 months. Is it? How do I know if it's the last period? What if?
Okay, so again, it's never black and white ever.
It's
and it's red.
I hate myself. I hate myself.
Or brown, but so it's never black and white, and those time frames really are a guidance, you know. So it's not like, oh, it's 1 month to go. Blah, blah, blah. It's very much, if you are so say, for example, you're still having periods, and bearing in mind the perimenopause is a hormonal roller coaster. So you may find that you don't have a period for months, and then you do have a period and it's much heavier than normal. And that's normal in the perimenopause. So it's really hard to know. But I think if you put it into context, if you suddenly had a bleed that just did not stop, or was really heavy, or a really odd color, or really offensive, or just you felt ill, if you were feeling really tired, or you had lower abdominal pain, or something wasn't quite right, then we would have to say, look, let's investigate. You know what I mean? Just because you still have 1 month to go until you meet, do you know what I mean? We still would investigate. So I think we go with the whole picture. And I always say as well with women, you are your expert. I'm the expert in health. You are your expert in body. You. Yeah.
You know bodies. I know my body.
You know your body. So you tell me how you feel. If you feel that this is just another period, it feels the same. It's just annoying that it's come back, fine. But if it's it's carrying on being a real problem, then we would just refer and get you seen.
And bleeding shouldn't. We talk about this kind of a lot, regardless of menopause or not. But when it comes, you mentioned just if bleeding is like very painful or very heavy, if people are watching and they think, God, my periods, or that when I'm going through perimenopause, that period a few months ago, periods shouldn't ruin your life, should they? They shouldn't be so painful or heavy that you can't get out of bed, or that you're soaking through a pad and tampon every hour. Like, would you advise them to speak to someone if they are having periods that are ruining their life, essentially?
Yes. This is an example of the gender pain gap. This is where us women, or many women, put up with symptoms that destroy their lives, or like you say, pain, or whether it's like hemorrhaging every month. That's not okay. And unfortunately, sometimes it's, oh well, my mum had really heavy periods, therefore
they're in the family.
It's normalized, and actually that's still not okay. There could be an underlying reason, or you may just need some treatment or something, or some investigation or something to help you. So absolutely, if you're even thinking it and thinking, God, this is really, just have a chat with your doctor or your nurse practitioner or whoever, and say, look, is this okay? Is this normal? What can I do? There are many things that you can try, even lifestyle tips that you can try that can help. And tracking your cycle, understanding your cycle. We talk about it loads at the Well with sporty women, with athletes. Just if you know your cycle, you know when you're due on, when you feel rubbish, that then empowers you, because then you can anticipate those symptoms and then you can do something about it. When to take anti-inflammatories, when to take pain relief. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, absolutely. If you feel it's affecting your life, don't suffer in silence.
And also, just because something isn't cancer, it doesn't mean you have to put up with it, right? Because I think sometimes it's like, oh, it's oh, I'm not dying, it's not that bad. But you need to address it. Just because something isn't going to kill you, it doesn't mean you should live with something horrific.
Totally agree.
Yeah. So you mentioned postmenopausal bleeding. So if, like, the lady you spoke to was 70 or whatever, and she had a bleed, and you were like, the alarm bells, let's refer you. But what counts as postmenopausal bleeding? So we've spoken about the time frame. So if you've not had the menstrual period for 12 months or more, or if you're over 50, 2 years, 45 to 50. But like, what if it's like, to people that are post-menopause, so I'm not on any hormonal contraceptions, and I have loads of different discharge throughout the month, and it's, all good. It doesn't, it's none of the sort of, it's not like a bloody colour, it's not an offensive smell, so I know it's just a normal part of my cycle. You get used to the consistencies, blah, blah, blah. Good, fine. But like, do people still have loads of discharge after the menopause, or is that linked to the cycle? And like, would a bit of, if you still have loads of discharge, if you do, and it was a little bit pink, would that be a bleed, or is that just, do you know what I mean? Like, what counts?
Yeah. So after the menopause, you won't get that regular cycle.
Okay.
So you probably will notice that your discharge either changes or stops. And I would say that anything like pink, brown, beige, discolored, anything that's heavy, anything that's persistent, I would get it checked. I would certainly take note of and get it checked.
So you would, if someone was 65, what, for a typical, I know we can't always say for everybody, but like, what would you expect to come out of, I hate the word healthy sometimes because I feel bad if someone doesn't feel healthy, but what would you expect to come out of a healthy 65-year-old's vagina? Would it be like a little bit of clear discharge sometimes, or really not much at all?
I would say not much at all. However, lots of women use vaginal estrogen, vaginal lubricants, and vaginal moisturizers. And so I would say there may be stuff coming down that is remnants of that from the night before or whatever. Don't forget, if a woman is still sexually active, which many women in their 60s are and should be if they want to be. It is a really tricky one. I would never say, I think, again, it's just taking each individual. And if a woman is on HRT having estrogen, she would still have probably a similar normal discharge as she would normally have.
Okay. So if a 65-year-old is on HRT and a 65-year-old isn't, you'd expect probably more
slightly different. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Interesting. Okay, so it's more about the classic knowing what's normal for you.
Classic knowing what's normal for you, and noticing if something changes.
Yeah, but you would describe sort of blood-stained or pinky discharge as abnormal bleeding. It doesn't need to be
I would
blood.
Anything that's pinky, because it might be, and this is another, it may be vaginal dryness is very classic, gives you kind of where the inside of the vagina, because of lack of estrogen, gets very sore and easily kind of scratched or irritated. And that can give you a pinky discharge. Now, that could be just postmenopausal, or it could be the beginnings of something else like vaginal cancer, which is so rare. But until you get it checked, you don't know. And actually, if it is just dryness, it's so easily managed with vaginal pessary. You can actually buy them over the counter now. And they're called, you're like this, Karen, they're called Gyne, like Vagina.
Vagina, I love it.
Vagina.
No, I would go in there and say, hi, can I have some Gyne juice? I'll come in with please don't find me. Oh God, please keep employing me. I'm so sorry. Oh God. I don't know. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm sorry, Mum. Right, okay, come on, be a professional, Karen, stop it. So, okay, so it can be anything from, we say abnormal bleeding, so and postmenopausal bleeding, it could be anything from a bit of pinky discharge to heavier stuff to brown stuff. It's anything that's in that sort of realm. And you'd advise speaking to the doctor. And also, it's not just womb cancer that's a symptom of, is it? It's also cervical and vaginal is the abnormal bleeding.
Yeah.
Why? Okay, so kind of let's stick, actually, we'll do ovarian and vulval after. We'll stick with the kind of abnormal bleeding, cervical, vaginal. Why does, sorry if this is controversial, but why does cervical screening stop at 64, 65? Because hopefully people are going to be alive for decades after that. And I can imagine someone worrying that they've had a screening up until a certain point and then kind of think, oh, I'm not having screening anymore, so I'm not at risk of cervical cancer. So I don't need to worry if I've had a bit of pinky discharge or bleeding after sex because I'm not.
Well, with screening, it is all about finding the group of people who are most at risk and making it cost effective, right? And this is the really important bit. Screening is all about people who don't have symptoms. Okay, so for example, if you had, take breast screening, if you had a breast lump, you wouldn't go for a mammogram, you'd go and see a breast specialist, And it's the same with smears. Smears are for people who have no symptoms whatsoever. So if you are, probably someone somewhere has realized that the risk of getting cervical screening over 64, 65, cervical cancer is so low that actually it's not worth it. But obviously, if you were to get any symptoms, then you would need to, you need to get it checked. Absolutely.
So if someone is over 65, has potential cervical cancer symptoms like the bleeding after menopause, bleeding after sex, pinky discharge, it's not that, oh, you need to go and demand to have a screening later in life. It's that you need to be investigated.
Well, yes. And well, also what would happen is all the way through your life, right, as women, if you've gone your entire life and had normal smear, you get to 64, the chances of you developing an abnormal smear are so slim, then yes, you would probably just find, no, do you know what, I'm going to stop. And then if I get any symptoms, that's the first thing I do, go back to my doctor. If you are somebody who's had abnormal smear, and you would be followed up with a gynecologist.
They're
or
not
an
just going
oncologist.
to say, oh, hi, Karen, at 63, you had an abnormal cervical screening result, but bye.
It won't work like that. Exactly. So it always takes into account. It should always take into account. But the bottom line is, if you have any symptoms, you shouldn't be having a smear. You should be going to your doctor and going to a gynecologist.
And the last abnormal bleeding cancer, vaginal cancer, it's very rare, isn't it? But it's not non-existent.
It's very rare.
Very rare,
but it's not non-existent, and it is linked to HPV, like cervical cancer. But it is, I mean, you can pretty much get cancer of anything, and so it's just something to be aware of. If you notice pain or discharge, or it's just something to be aware of.
And so because it's rare, to say someone sort of watches one of these things and is 70 and has never touched inside their vagina before and then thinks, oh my God, I felt a lump. Would you, obviously, hopefully they would come to their doctor, so say they came to you, would you sort of initially in the back of your mind think, oh gosh, this could be something serious? Or would you maybe think, okay, it's more likely it's just part of her normal kind of vaginal makeup and bumps and ridges and that sort of thing, and not initially worry? Or would they also like the equivalent of the womb cancer bleeding referral pathway? Would someone that comes to you and is 70 and says, oh my God, I've put my finger inside my vagina and I felt a lump, would you kind of whisk them off to a referral in the same way?
So some women know their bodies so well. Some women really don't and don't want to. Some women start to insert, I don't know, like vaginal pessaries at a later time in life, and suddenly feel something and go, gosh, I don't know if that's normal or not. And that's okay. And I see lots of women of every age who will say, I felt something. Could you just check it out? They come in, I check it out. And 99% of the time you say, no, that's a gland. That's normal. That's just, it looks absolutely perfect. But I have to see it. We have to see it. You can't say, oh, I'm sure it's fine. You have to go to the doctor.
Lump of tumor.
If it was a lump of tumor, then it would go again 2-week wait straight to a gynecologist to have a look at it.
And okay, so we will we could always talk about each thing in each stage of life forever, couldn't we? But
we could talk for hours. I love it.
for hours. So I don't want people to watch and think, oh, they think they've covered womb, cervical and vaginal in people that are postmenopausal, but we have to draw the line somewhere. So let's move on to ovarian cancer. So so also quickly with womb, cervical and vaginal, so like the bleeding cancers, you said about if someone has a womb, they need to take estrogen balanced with progesterone for HRT. If they don't have a womb, they can just take estrogen HRT. Does HRT in any capacity like increase or decrease your risk of cervical and vaginal cancer, just to kind of get those three?
Well, HRT is used to help protect your vagina and vulva from dryness post-menopausal. So many women, if you are on HRT, systemic HRT, so in the form of a patch or a tablet, you may still get symptoms of vaginal dryness or vulval dryness. And so many women take the vaginal pessaries, the estrogen pessaries, or there's a ring that you can have that's inserted every 3 months, and that can help a lot of those symptoms. I don't know actually if estrogen reduces your risk of vaginal or vulval cancer, but it certainly helps reduce the vulval and vaginal dryness. So it's I don't know the answer to that, Karen.
But it's not like the taking estrogen when you've got a womb on its own. It doesn't like skyrocket a risk or anything.
No, because so I see what you're trying to say. So having vaginal estrogen is the equivalent of having one HRT tablet in a year. So the risk,
it's a fraction.
It's tiny and it's localized. It's localized right where it needs to be. So
you mean like so a patch that gets into my blood and I've got it everywhere?
Correct.
If it's a pessary in my vagina, it's not going anywhere.
No, it's going just to the vagina.
And just keeping it a bit more supple. And that's
so you don't need. So if you are having vaginal estrogen, you don't need additional progesterone.
Okay. Thank you. So ovarian cancer. First of all, does HRT in sort of this kind of that sort of same thread? Does it, depending on what type of HRT you're taking, are you more or less likely to get an ovarian cancer, or is it not a risk?
Not really known. Not really. No.
So it's not some sort of alarm bell.
No. Oh, gosh, not like breast cancer.
Yes, because
where there's been. Yeah. So with the thing with HRT is that 20 years ago there was this study which basically said overnight it sort of announced to the world that HRT was really dangerous. It caused breast cancer, it caused XYZ, and was linked to heart disease and stroke. And subsequent studies have actually said that, well, there were flaws to that study and a lot of the data was misleading and incorrect. And also now we use something called body identical HRT, which is a lot safer. So there is a very slight increased risk of breast cancer with estrogen and progesterone together. But if you have estrogen on its own so if you don't have a womb, there's no increased risk, believe it or not, of breast cancer.
I really don't think, Bella, that's known to the general public enough, is it?
Yeah.
That's so interesting. I really think there's still that myth out there that estrogen, HRT, and you're going to get breast cancer.
It's the equivalent of having 2 units of alcohol every night. It's very much a lifestyle risk. It's much smaller than, say, if you are obese, because you produce estrogen in your fat cells. And so the risk of breast cancer is actually higher if you're obese than if you are on HRT.
That puts into very stark.
It's a lifestyle. And the thing is as well is that you must remember that some women suffer so greatly in the menopause that they are almost suicidal, so
you know what, I was just about to say something. So
so actually if you say to them, look, this is going to make you feel better, but it's going to increase your risk of breast cancer by X amount, they'd say, I'll take that, please. I need it, just to make life.
They'd rather be here with that risk than not be here, because it can, the menopause really, really can affect people very negatively, can't it?
It can.
It's not just the periods are stopping it. The mental health decline correlating with menopause is kind of through the roof, isn't it?
It's through the roof. And the mental health symptoms are often the first things that you feel and see and notice.
Oh, really?
Yes. So things like ruminating thoughts, feeling anxious, palpitations, women who get sort of investigated for heart problems when actually it's the perimenopause. Things like feeling low in mood. A lot of women say to me that they feel very emotional, very out of control of their emotions, very close to tears. Many women describe this sort of red mist where they suddenly feel very angry. So a lot of them, there's a huge mental health side of things. And over the last few decades, women have suffered silently. They've given up jobs, they've retired early, they've lost out on many aspects of their lives because of a life stage that is inevitable, that is going to happen to all of us. So it's a tragedy, really.
One of the talks, so part of my job at Eve is to go and do talks to communities or companies that we're partnered with, and a talk I did last month, afterwards one of the employees came up to me, and Bella, I was like almost in tears, because she was 52, she'd gone through menopause only just, sort of thing, and she said she wasn't taking HRT because she felt like that would be relying on something fake, you know, kind of like, you know, it's sort of, I don't want to take a pill, I don't want to, you know, lots of people think about that with antidepressants and things, don't they? Kind of, they don't want to be known or seen to be taking something. They should just be okay with themselves and whatever.
Do it naturally, sort of thing.
I said to her, but you're replacing what you've lost. You're not this, you know, weak woman that can't cope with what's gone on. It's that, and even if you were, that's also okay. But it's you've lost something, so you're just topping up what's gone away from you. You shouldn't have to just do without what you've had for 40 years suddenly.
Yeah. I mean, and one thing I would say though is it's because a lot of women actually now, because there's been this massive media you know, an announcement of menopause and HRT, which is good. And I think what happens often is that the pendulum was one way and it's literally gone the other way. And so it's everywhere. Everyone's talking about it. And certainly in my world, everyone's talking about it, which is brilliant. But then I get a lot of women who are who ring me up and go, oh, do I need HRT? Like, I feel fine.
Yeah.
I'm in my 40s. Like, should I have it because of my bones or not? Or, you know what I mean? So, and I think it has to come back. We have to be realistic. We have to think not everyone needs it. Not everyone can have it. Not everyone wants it. And actually what is important, fundamentally important, is to have a good lifestyle. There's no point in being on HRT if you're drinking gallons of white wine and not exercising and eating rubbish and really stressed and, you know, all the things.
What's that patch going to do compared to all of that?
So actually in some, so for some women, it's a case of, look, sort your life and your lifestyle out and see how you feel. But then you get other women who have a really good lifestyle and doing everything in their power, and they really do need HRT.
That was like this woman I spoke to. She was fit as a fiddle, exercised, like ate healthy. She said she doesn't drink or anything, and she was still like in tears every day. And then, but then the opposite side is like what you just said. So it's basically assessing your own situation, your own lifestyle, and if it might benefit you. And there's no shame if it will.
So the advice really is that every individual should have an individualized approach. So every single person should be completely different, and what's right for you. You know, if you feel it's something that you want, then you work it out with the person prescribing it for you.
Of course. Okay, so ovarian cancer. Sorry, that was a whole tangent. But ovarian cancer. So the symptoms of ovarian cancer we always talk about are kind of different. I call it like tummy and toilet habits. It's persistent bloating, persistent abdominal pain, a change in bowel habits, needing to urinate more frequently. And this is when, like, for no actual reason, you know, it's not like you're drinking a gallon of water when you never have before when you go to bed. Of course you're going to wee more in the night. Feeling sick when you're trying to eat, feeling full more quickly. And we always talk about things like IBS, where someone goes to the doctor, describes like that they're constipated, bloated, and, you know, need to wee loads, and they'll go down like a gastrointestinal referral route. But surely that's if someone is a little bit younger. Like, you can't just get IBS at 55, can you? Or can things like menopause trigger IBS and tummy and toilet problems?
It can. Hormone changes can, but I would always be really careful saying to anyone that you're going to get IBS symptoms later on in life, because you've had a menstrual cycle all the way through, and that would have affected your bowels in certain ways. So yeah, I would be really careful in terms of diagnosing IBS later on. I wanted to say at this point, whereas cervical cancer is a kind of a success story, ovarian cancer is still a bit of a nightmare in terms of there isn't screening for it. There isn't a brilliant test for it. There isn't the symptoms of what the ovaries are so deep in your pelvis. The symptoms often don't present until there's something there that's actually making that, you know, it's big enough to make symptoms. So it's one of those things that, if you notice little things like passing urine more frequently, feeling bloated, can't do your trousers up, or a bit more constipated, anything like that, you think, I'm just not sure this is persistent. This is not coming and going with hormones. Just go and see your doctor. You can have a blood test, which is something called a CA125, which is the ovarian tumor marker, and you can have a scan, and you can proactively look to see if the ovaries look normal.
It can piece together the picture of the ovaries, can't it? Helps you work out. So I'm aware that we've gone way over time quickly, because we could go on forever and ever and ever. Vulval cancer, people. So top line. any changes to your vulva, like changes to the skin, itchiness, soreness, lumps, bumps, red and raised, lighter, darker patches, change to the mole on the vulva, anything from mons pubis round to your bum hole, look at it, touch it, feel it. If it changes, seek help. But that's kind of what people know who follow Eve anyway, because they're vulval cancer symptoms. But is there any difference, or other than it being more common in people post-menopause, like with all of them apart from cervical, is there anything that happens to the vulva during or after menopause that is normal but people might mistake for vulval cancer? You know, is there anything menopause wise that is worth mentioning when we talk about vulval?
Yes. So as you say, vulval cancer is a lot more common as you get older, over 80% over the age of 60. It is basically like a form of skin cancer. So you need to use a mirror and check it every 4 weeks. With lack of estrogen, you can get what we call atrophy. So you can get changes to the vulva where the sometimes it changes its appearance. If you've got a condition like lichen sclerosis, if you're diagnosed with that later on, so earlier on, you need to have an examination every year to check for any changes. So I think really, I think vulval symptoms after the menopause are common because you can get itching and soreness and irritation post-menopause because of lack of estrogen.
Fine.
But I would always say that you should at some point get that seen by a doctor or a nurse practitioner because it's really important to keep a close eye on this area. It's a vulnerable area. We know it changes post-menopause, but if we just need to make sure that nothing nasty is growing.
Okay. I feel like I'm just going to cut you off, but I have to because we've gone over. I'm sorry. I feel like that this is the thing. I always say this with the evil because we cover 5 gynae cancers and not just one cancer. It's just like 5 times as much content, isn't it? For whenever we talk about anything. Bella, I'm going to love you and leave you. I'll say go wait in the green room and I'll say goodbye to you in a minute. Bella, thank you so much for joining us. We love Bella. Bella is wonderful. I think it was really great to hear her insight and expertise on kind of the menopause and HRT. I found particularly interesting because I don't know very much about it at all. And I think she's wonderful. And I hope you found this chat about gynae cancer symptoms post-menopause, the risk, HRT during menopause and associated risks with gynae cancer. I hope you found it interesting, informative, and thanks if you've tuned in live. We love you, and thanks if you're watching on catch up. We love you loads too. So if you've got any questions about anything that you've watched tonight, our Ask Eve service is always there, always available for you to answer any gynae cancer question or concern. The email address is nurse@eveappeal.org.uk, and we'll put the contact information in the kind of social media posts we do promoting this episode for people to watch on catch up. And thank you so much for watching. We'll be back next Tuesday, the 11th of October, and we'll be talking about going through the menopause as a result of gynae cancer. So if you haven't already gone through the menopause, so you're younger and you're going through it because you've had treatment for a gynecological cancer. So thank you again so much for watching. Stay safe and see you next week.